Hello and welcome to another episode of our Brothers Creed podcast, where we talk about motivation, experiences, and exploring the world around us. We're the Thomas Brothers. I'm Ethan.
And I'm Jared, and today we're going to talk about an interesting topic, a little bit along the lines of men's health. We're going to talk about testosterone, and it's kind of a big topic right now amongst the world of men, I guess, middle-aged men, especially with this whole Liver King thing coming out, recently, where he's, I think it came out that he spent like $12,000 a month on all kinds of juice he's putting in his body, and then obviously he's telling everybody, "Oh, this is just eating liver and Rocky Mountain oysters," and obviously there's a big demand out there. People are really interested. I see a lot of stuff like this on TikTok. A lot of studies people are talking about. So what we did is we actually looked into some of those studies, and we looked into some of those the validity of some of these natural or non hormonal injections, essentially, to see what the validity of some of those are. Obviously, this is a topic on men's hormones, but we kind of do talk a little bit about. We will talk about men's sexual health. So, if you have little ears, maybe not the best episode to listen to. So, anyway, it's going to be good though, and it'll be very informative. We got lots of good stuff for you guys. So let's go ahead and dive in.
Spartans! What is your profession?
Any man who must say, "I am the king," is no true king.
What I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills that make me a nightmare.
If I can change, and you can change, everybody can change!
Let us all unite! Let us fight for a new world, a decent world.
So today we're going to be talking about testosterone. This episode was kind of spawned by some interesting TikToks that Jared and I had sent to each other and found that had to do with some interesting ways of increasing your testosterone, and as us starting to get into that middle-aged man
Yes.
category, we thought, hey, it might be something to look into.
So a quick fact on that. Just I read a thing that said at the age of 30, your testosterone rate falls at a rate of 1% per year. So I'm 34 and you're 32, 33?
Yep, 32.
About
33 next week.
33, yeah. So, we're past that, man. I'm already 4% down.
4% down, man. You better catch up.
I got to do something. So,
and that depends on where you started too.
Yeah,
because not everybody starts at the top of the range too.
Yeah,
and we'll kind of go over some of that, some of the ranges as well. But just kind of layman's terms, quick understanding of what testosterone is. Testosterone is a hormone found in humans as well as some other animals. In men, the testicles primarily make testosterone. In women, the ovaries make testosterone, although it is much less, much lower amounts in women. Testosterone starts to significantly increase the production during puberty, and then, as Jared said, it starts to dip after the age of 30. So, testosterone is most often associated with sex drive, sperm production, muscle mass, the way men and women store fat on their bodies, red blood cell production. There's just lots of different
metabolism
things that testosterone controls within the body, especially the male body.
Yeah, a few others I would add to that list are metabolism, your bone mass, or your bone density. Also, kind of anti-aging, or like that was one of the kind of ways that they had called it, in that it helps your cells remain rejuvenated, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So, interestingly, I was reading a study. So, I wanted to track. There's been several studies on basically the history of testosterone through the years. And there's been several studies that have observed there's significant reduction in testosterone levels over time. So in 2007, there was a study that stated that testosterone decreased by about 22% when comparing to men in 1985 levels to 2004 levels. So from 1985 to 2004, the average levels of free testosterone and in the male body had decreased just on average, just generally by 22% in what is that, 20 something years.
It seems like a lot.
And so, yeah, there was another study that did something similar between 1999 and 2016. And it said that differentiator, the number was about 25% lower in 2016 on average in men than in 1999. So even slightly higher as we get into the closer to our current year. And so that was really kind of interesting, and it kind of made me think, why on earth would the average testosterone levels in men decrease through the years? I would think that more men in 1985 are worried about, I say, working out or whatever else than in 2016, but maybe not. Not that working out has everything to do with testosterone, but I don't know, Jared. What do you think? What do you think are some reasons?
So a couple of reasons I found were, the obesity. You go back in the
Yeah.
80s and stuff, and people weren't nearly as obese as they are today. And being obese is a major cause of a loss of testosterone. So there's that. Another thing that some people talk about is like estrogens in lotions and shampoos and soaps that we use. How that
A lot of soy.
I'm not sure about
No,
soy
seriously, a
specifically.
lot of. No, it is. Soy products. If people consume lots of soy products, there's a high level of estrogen in soy products.
Okay.
You have to consume quite a bit, but with the introduction of so many soy products and soy based products in our food today, that they contributed a little bit of it to that
Is
as
that where the
well.
term soy boy came from? Someone who's not
Yeah.
very low on testosterone in their body.
Yeah,
But
maybe.
yeah, it's interesting, the decrease. I think one to say that's all was just they thought it had mainly to do with obesity rates, because you're talking generalities, and generally people are overweight,
Yeah.
man. Heck, you look at the South, and most people are just. If you took an average of weight across the South alone, people would be 50 pounds overweight. So I think when you're
Yeah.
talking in broad averages like that, the obesity epidemic really pulls that down.
Yeah, and those were kind of the two big things that I had seen was excessive weight gain as compared to those previous years, and kind of hand in hand with excessive weight gain and obesity is just an overall increase in or decline in health, just in general. Much more diabetes, and that could be attributed to maybe the quality of food that we're eating, the more preservatives, or other, I don't know, dyes or whatever it might be that might be contributing to poor health. Sedentary lifestyles,
Yeah, exactly.
whatever it might be. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that what you just mentioned, the lifestyle changes. Yeah, you had people working in offices and stuff like that back in the 80s. There were people, but not nearly as much as you have today, with people just on computers all day. I think the amount of sunlight, as I'll talk about later in my thing, has a lot to do with testosterone in your body. So maybe that is a contributing factor, that a lot of people now are just working on their computers all day. They're not really getting up,
Yeah, I think that's definitely interesting. So I had kind of what some normal testosterone ranges are, if we wanted to
Yeah, sure.
get into that a little bit before we get into kind of maybe some signs of low testosterone, and then maybe what we can do to increase that. Different ways of increasing your testosterone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So average ranges of testosterone. So this is gonna be in the metric for this is nanograms per deciliter. So I'm not going to say that for every range. I'm just going to say the numbers, and then just know that I'm talking about nanograms per deciliter. So in children, the first couple months and this is mostly in men, is what I'm talking about in males. In children, the first couple months, the body should produce between 75 and 400, and that's nanograms per deciliter. By the time the child is 10 or 11 years old, that should change to about 7 to 130.
Now, are you talking
early teens?
Are you talking about free testosterone, or are you talking about like total testosterone?
This is total testosterone.
Okay.
Yeah, free testosterone has a different metric, but this is, they're obviously kind of related within your body. If you have low total testosterone or serum testosterone, then you're most likely have low free testosterone as well. But so this is just talking total. So in early teens, so between the ages of 12 and 13, a person should have between 7 and 800. But by the age of 15 to 16, that number should be between 100 and 1,200. Obviously,
Whoa, that's a huge
100
range.
is on the the 100 is on the way low side, and 1,200 is like your
Macho Man.
you're
or something.
benching, you're benching 385 as a sophomore in high school, probably. So in the late teens, 17 to 18 years old, it should be between 300 and 1,200 again. So during those teen ages, the testosterone is kind of has a high range, elevated on that high side. Adults, so anyone over 19 years old, should have anywhere between 240 to 950. So that is kind of the ranges of what testosterone, that total testosterone should be in the body. So, and through your, so the adult range is 240 to 950. So once you hit 30 years old, like Jared said, your testosterone starts to decline at a pretty significant rate of, maybe 1% per year. So if you start 30 years old at the low end of the range, then by the time you're 50, then you could be having issues with your testosterone. So I actually, and I'll get personal here, so I actually in late 2019 had my testosterone tested. Went to the doctor and just kind of had a full blood workup, and that's one of the things that they tested. So the average range of testosterone for someone my age, right, is 240 to 950, and my total testosterone came in at 412, which actually I was kind of
So the range is 240 to what
not-
was the top of the range?
the top of the range was 950, 240 to 950.
Oh, 950.
And mine came in
Okay,
at
so you're
412.
kind of in the middle.
So I'm in the lower part of the middle. This was 2019. What I will say is that I was significantly heavier, and I was probably another almost 50 pounds heavier than I am now. And that wasn't good weight either. So I just thought that was interesting. So what I have actually over the past couple years been trying to do several things to increase that total testosterone. And I thought it'd be interesting to go back and to get tested again to kind of see what my current levels are over the past couple years of me doing different things to kind of try to increase that and see if the range is increased at all.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I actually did something. I did a similar. I was like last year. I just did it wasn't a test, a blood test. It was just a mouth swab, and then I sent in. It was like I think it was like $60 or $70, and it was it tests the free testosterone, which they explained is like they were saying that they think it's a better measure because they felt like it's open testosterone that's willing to be deployed at any time, and it's not testosterone that's needed for your metabolism and whatnot. So I'm trying to find exactly what the ranges were, but I believe I came in kind of middle of the range. It wasn't anything, surprising. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, but because it's funny when we talk about like the symptoms of low testosterone, we're like, or do you have decreased energy? Do you have an increase in fat? Do you have a reduced sex drive? Are you feeling exhausted and not feeling motivated to do anything? I'm like, are those just symptoms of having children?
Well, when I went to the doctor, I told the doctor, I was like, man, I am so tired all the time. I'm not sleeping well.
Oh yeah.
I'm just exhausted, and I go, I don't know if that's because I have low testosterone or if it's because I got 3 kids and a newborn baby. And she was like, it's probably the kids, but we'll test it anyway.
Yeah.
That was one number that they tested as well, along with the total
Mm-hmm.
testosterone is my free testosterone. And I guess that
Mm-hmm.
range is 9.3 on the low end to 26.5 on the high end. And I came in at a 16.7, so it was kind of right in the middle.
Oh, well, must have been the kids then, right?
Yeah, well, maybe.
Well, we'll see what maybe after we deploy some of our methodologies we've learned here today, we can.
Yeah.
So I know I've got a couple different ways, and you've got a couple different ways. Is there anything else you wanted to mention just about testosterone generally before we get into some of these methodologies?
We talked about some of the signs of low testosterone, and those are kind of decreased sex drive, low energy, weight gain, depression, moodiness, low self-esteem, loss of body hair, weaker bones and joints. So those are all things of signs of low testosterone. So, but yeah, let's get into some of the ways to increase.
Nice. So I will. There's a couple just easy ones that I had just maybe just knock off. Getting proper amount of sleep. If you have any more details on any of these, Ethan, let me know. But not getting enough sleep, that can affect your amount of testosterone. So make sure you're getting enough sleep at night. Eating less sugar is something you should do. High insulin levels actually decrease the amount of testosterone in your body. So don't eat so much sugar. That will help. And that kind of goes hand in hand with being overweight, being obese. That leads to a lower amount of testosterone. Hand in hand with that kind of is working out more. A higher muscle mass is positively correlated with a higher testosterone. So maybe not a causal relationship, but there's a high correlation there. Obviously, if you have more testosterone, you may have a higher muscle mass per the Liver King reference we had at the beginning of the episode. But definitely going to the gym and working out will help you get your body in shape and help you start to build some muscle mass, and then that will hopefully be a cycle of building that muscle mass that you with the testosterone that you do have, and then it kind of grows from there. So I had one theory that's been out there that I really wanted to research more was this light therapy. There's a couple studies out there about different lights that people say, if you shine this light on yourself, you're going to get more testosterone, and it's going to increase your levels naturally. So if all I have to do is shine a light bulb somewhere on myself, maybe that's an easy win as opposed to getting a shot every month for the rest of my whole life. So, just to kind of give you a baseline education on the electromagnetic spectrum. So you have everything from microwaves to visible light, infrared visible light, and then all the way over to X-rays and beyond that. And all of these, the electromagnetic spectrum depends on the frequency of that electromagnetic wave. And depending on where the frequency is, that is what it is. So most of that, is just within, obviously, it was just visible light. It's a very small portion of that. And then most of it is unseen, like radio waves and all this other stuff. So that's important to understand. But red light is at the end, almost at the frequency-wise, it's at the end of the visible light spectrum, and it's almost goes into the infrared when the wavelength passes about 780 nm, which I believe is nanometers, which means the wavelength is a wider distance. So as you go more into infrared and beyond that, the waves get actually wider between each peak of the wave. So with that baseline knowledge, in 1939, so this is a pretty old study, there was a study done by Abraham Meyerson and Rudolf Nestalt on the influence of ultraviolet irradiation upon excretion of sex hormones in the male. So the study used a light bulb in this one that was 20% luminous and 28% ultraviolet rays and 52% infrared. So infrared and ultraviolet are kind of like to the right and to the left of the visible light spectrum. So this light bulb had a little bit of each of them. So kind of like the sun, the sun has throwing all kinds of rays at us, but this one had a kind of a mixture. And so the study showed that the men were exposed to the light on their chests, that when they were exposed to the light on their chests for a certain amount of time, their testosterone went up 120%. And then they said, well, should we shine it on other parts of the body? And they said, well, yeah, maybe we can shine it on the genitals, or the gonads, as they called them in the study. And when they did that, they just shined it on a small portion on your testicles, and that was 200% improvement in their testosterone levels. They do not say that this effect was... They had looked at like birds and things, and they said, well, because the ovaries are internal, it wouldn't have the same effect. So they actually didn't study females for this, but they, based off of some of the studies they've done with birds, they said that it likely would not have the same effect. It is believed, and what's interesting here is that they also shined a portion on the light on someone's back with the same amount of light that they shined on their testicles, and it was a very small jump. They shined it at people's faces, and it was a mediocre jump, but not as big. So the question really that they wanted to answer was, a lot of people said, oh, well, it's the pineal gland within the brain that creates testosterone, and so it has to go through your eyes. That's where the light has to go in through. And this study kind of showed that, well, it can be absorbed through the skin if you're shining that light on the skin. So it's not necessarily need to go through your eyes. It can go through the skin. That was proved by shining it directly on these guys' testicles instead of in their eyes or on their faces. You know what I mean? So the study... what interesting that they kind of said, well, that's interesting that this UV, this light would, this UV, infrared, and light increase testosterone so much, and they're like, well, maybe that's why in some of these tropical climates where the sun is, at the equator, the sun is out more year round, these certain bird species have multiple mating seasons. And said maybe that's because these birds are getting blasted by the sun all the time, and they have more testosterone, thus a second mating season. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Interesting.
The study suggested at kind of at the end that there should essentially be more studies done on the broader light spectrum and what really causes this effect. So there's another study that was done in 2013. There were rats that were showed that when there was a light of 670 nanometers, which is a red color, was shined on the rats' testicles, it increased their testosterone with no noted side effects. So this one's interesting because the actual wavelength actually matters, because they tested two different wavelengths here, 670 and 808. 808 is kind of more in that infrared range. So when they did it with the 808, it actually caused like cell damage, lots of weird growths. It actually damaged the cells, and so that 680 was like the perfect range that they found that increased that testosterone. And they looked at how much the rats like mounted females and what exactly they were doing, and they did find that made a substantial difference, but it was that 670. So Ethan, you were saying the other day, you're like, oh, I'm thinking about buying a red light. I said, wait till I talk to you, because 670 is like kind of that magic number. I actually typed in 670 nm red light just in Google, and all this stuff comes up about how that spectrum of light, that red light, also has to do, is also known as like helping improve your sleep quality. There are tons of night lamps that are at that range that will help you kind of lull you to sleep. It helps produce melatonin. And as you know, red light doesn't kill your night vision. So it's kind of an interesting, piece. You could, get something that you could use as a night light, but also, you could shine it on yourself somehow to increase your testosterone. Now, there was one other study that I thought was interesting as well. So this was a study done in Europe, in a European college in 2016, that showed that bright light therapy helps as well. So this is more bright light. It's not exactly red light. So only the one with the rats was the red light. And I've seen people on TikTok and other things say, oh, red lights, that's where it's at. But actually, of these three that I looked at, one was just kind of that one light bulb that was some infrared, some luminous, and some ultraviolet. There was the red light. There was the rat one with the lasers. They actually used lasers. And then this one was just a bright light therapy. So they used a seasonal light box, which was used in early morning for half an hour. So before the treatment, both groups averaged sexual satisfaction score of 2 out of 10. So they got people, these college students who were kind of had issues with depression, just kind of dysfunctional type folks that were at the low end of the spectrum, and they wanted to see if this could increase anything. So, but after treatments, the group exposed to the bright light scored sexual satisfaction scores of around 6.3, a more than threefold increase on the scale that they used. In contrast, the control group only showed an average score of around 2.7 after treatment. So, interesting. They used that bright light box, and it increased their satisfaction, their sexual satisfaction, by a multiple of 3. It says the researchers also found that testosterone levels increased in men who had been...
So is that bright?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, is that bright light like sunlight, or is that related to vitamin D, or...
Yeah, I think it's more of just like, so I have more details on the light, that what it is a... This one seemed mainly focused on like the eyes, because it said there was a cornea distance. The cornea distance of the light was 1 meter. So I'm thinking this was maybe just shined on the person's just generally. So it may have had more to do with just a bright light. The light was like a 10,000 lux, which is actually the light intensity when it reaches the surface. So you've heard of lumens, and then there's lumens, and then there's lux. lumens is the amount of like light that leaves the flashlight or whatnot, but lux is like the amount that reaches the destination. So it's a little bit different. And then
Yeah.
so this one was a white fluorescent light box. It was called a Superlight 3S, which is a light box, and it was 4,100 Kelvin light. So they measure these things different. This one's actually a little bit more yellow. That Kelvin, 4,100 Kelvin light, and that's actually a little bit more on the yellow spectrum. So it's more like natural sunlight, which is, and it's just from a fluorescent bulb, but it's bright light therapy. So it says the researchers also found that testosterone levels increased in the men who had been given active light treatments. The average testosterone levels in the control group showed no significant change over the course of the treatment. It was around 2.3 ng per milliliter at both beginning at the end of the experiment. However, the group given the active treatment showed an increase from around 2.1 to 3.6 after 2 weeks. So in this case, they only did it 30 minutes a day. They just sat in front of this bright light box. Now I looked online, and they actually sell a lot of these bright light boxes for seasonal depression. It's just basically a box with a couple of fluorescent light bulbs in it. You put it right in front of you, and it's super bright, and it actually helps combat seasonal depression. So that's basically what they were doing in this therapy, which isn't, after digging into it more, it's not as like, oh, this is red light confirmed again. So really only one of these 3 studies actually had to do with red light therapy, and that was the one in rats. The other 2, which were the actual ones on humans, had more to do with like bright light therapy. One was bright light therapy specifically on your testicles, which was a little bit different. That one had a little bit more of the spectrum than I think that the other one did. It had ultraviolet and infrared. But it's interesting to understand that the verdict is still out on this, I think. I think that if you went with some type of bright light, a seasonal depression box, or some type of red light flashlight or something within the wavelength of 670, you'd probably be good with either of those, and it might be worth it just to test either of those. I did look up those light boxes, though, and one base one that seemed to match what they had used in that third study was like $300. So it's pretty expensive.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I'm kind of curious as far as the light portion goes of, would it really affect kind of your mood and your sleep and how you're feeling and even your testosterone levels. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's just like you've talked about before on the podcast, Ethan, is just getting out in the sun, and just kind of sunbathing for maybe 15 to 20 minutes a day. I think that also make a big difference. I think that if you hear some people talking about sunning your nuts, if you did that, if you got a privacy backyard, that might help improve it, because based off some of this stuff, direct sunlight does make a difference. So depending on how open you are in your neighborhood, maybe you'll get the stigma of that guy.
Yeah, I wonder. They should take an average testosterone readings of like nudist colonies to see if they're if they get more sunlight, skin exposure.
I think that there's some uncontrollable variables there you have to account for.
Yeah. There's a couple other ways, of increasing your testosterone, let's say naturally versus kind of injecting anabolics, or you can take them by pill form or whatever else, but ingesting or putting some sort of additional hormone therapy, replacement therapy into your body, which actually taking testosterone, artificial testosterone, can actually decrease your body's ability to create its own testosterone. That's why a lot of bodybuilders that go on testosterone and anabolic steroids, they have to basically continue a regimen of hormone testosterone therapy for the rest of their life in order to keep their systems going. Just because their systems are shot afterwards. If you're injecting or ingesting all of this testosterone into your body, then your body is like, well, I don't need to create anymore, and it kind of shuts down. Which it can come back, but not as strong. So, what are some other things we can do, Jared? You talked about some, and those are awesome. Other than, I don't know, chewing on leather, walking on hot coals, or listening to Rammstein, there are some other things that we can do as well. We talked about eating well, exercising, supplementation. There are some natural supplements that you can take. Vitamin D has a strong correlation to testosterone. And so if someone is extremely deficient in vitamin D, they're not getting enough sunlight, they can get that through the sun, or they can also get that through supplementation, which is good as well. That's something that I supplement every day. Another one is ashwagandha. It's kind of a natural herb that can help with increasing that testosterone naturally. There's another natural substance that's called Tonkat Ali. That's interesting. There's some studies on that has shown proof of increasing testosterone as well. There was a guy on Joe Rogan. His name was Andrew Huberman, and it was a really interesting episode. He's a neuroscientist at Stanford, and he studies all of like brain neuroregeneration and hormones and all sorts of kind of stuff. And he's actually talked about some of these supplements that people are deficient in, or that can naturally increase your testosterone. Another one that was interesting.
What about that one that's?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, what about that horny goat's weed? Have you heard about that one?
Yeah, horny goat weed. Or there's the deer antler velvet. Have you heard about that one?
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, that's kind of that used to be a big thing. Oh, deer antler velvet. Basically, it was saying that in the before rut, whenever the deer are growing their antlers, they have like a velvet on them, and that's when they're like highest in testosterone, and so people were like, taking that. So another one too that I thought was interesting was cold exposure. That's something that can kind of give your body, when your body receives this cold shock, it releases a ton of proteins to prevent muscle tissue from wasting away, and endorphins and dopamine and all these different types of things. And testosterone is one of those things that is produced and stimulated whenever you are exposed to cold shock, so to cold exposure. It doesn't have to be, freezing yourself to death or hypothermia, but just putting your body into shock can help stimulate that testosterone. Another one is eating onions. People say that eating onions can increase your testosterone. I don't know. There's studies behind that one, but that was interesting.
Yeah, on that one. So apparently onions are an aphrodisiac. So they apparently stimulate sexual desire.
They don't help your breath, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I thought of the Grinch when I saw about eating onions, and I was like, man, that's gonna definitely kill. Maybe it might increase your testosterone, but it's gonna kill any romantic relations that may happen.
Yeah, I had one other study that I thought was kind of interesting as well. So it gets into average testosterone levels and political party. Thought this was kind of interesting. So there was a study done by Professor Paul Zak, who is the director of the Center of Neuroeconomics at Claremont Graduate University, and he did some research on testosterone levels and political affiliations. And basically the conclusion, there's a bunch of different evidence and stuff that goes into the study, but the conclusion of the study is when weakly affiliated Democrats, well, maybe not like super left-wing, but kind of weakly affiliated but listed registered Democrats, when they received additional testosterone or testosterone supplementation, the strength of their party affiliation fell by 12%. And they reported a 45% warmer feelings towards Republican candidates. And so basically they're saying that the Democrats that were more kind of towards the middle of their feelings and their political affiliations, once they received testosterone therapy, they were 45% more likely to accept and to vote for Republican
Interesting.
candidates, which was interesting.
Yeah. Very interesting.
So not to say that that is, one way or the other, but I thought it was an interesting study, that I don't know if that is just how people think. I don't know, maybe if it affected their depression or affected how they were feeling, or not that all Democrats are depressed. I'm not saying that at all, but
some are if you voted for Hillary Clinton.
So
I would be if I voted for Hillary Clinton. Or if you voted for Joe Biden right now, you're probably depressed too.
Seriously. Well, everybody's depressed.
Yeah, exactly. Especially after this year, man. Jeez. I have one additional piece that might be I thought was a little bit interesting. This one has to do with testosterone and erotica. So this was off a website that I just found that there was. I found there some of their statements were interesting to say the least. So this is some of what they said. They said a long string of studies have found that sexual behavior increases testosterone, but sexual arousal without behavior, including review of adult material, also can increase testosterone. So they're talking about erotica in this sense. When researchers from the University of Michigan reviewed numerous studies as part of a report they published in Archives of Sexual Behavior on Sexual Thoughts and their link to testosterone, they found evidence that men's testosterone increased when they watched erotic movies and even when the men didn't masturbate or engage in any other sexual activity. So some of these journals can be totally BS. I know that I've seen some stuff people submit absolutely nonsense, like trolling articles to these medical journals, especially when they're about sexual behavior, and they actually took them seriously. So I would doubt, I would put a heavy asterisk on anything I saw in there, but I thought this was interesting. It said another study found that the effects is not limited to erotic materials. Men who visited a swingers club but only watched experienced an 11% increase in their testosterone. I thought that was interesting. A 2011 study found, that was a study in 2011. However, that increase paled when compared with men who actually participated. They saw a 72% increase in testosterone. So I'm not encouraging you by any means to go to a swingers club. But what I am encouraging you to do is if you, all those guys out there who are married, I personally believe that I think you should be married if you're going to go up and having sex, because it's just much better, makes things much easier within marriage, along with many other reasons. But go have sex with your wife, and that will increase your testosterone as well, and probably your relationship as well. So I know that most guys are probably like, heck yeah, man, I'm trying to do that anyway. But I think some of the studies, I think we can conclude from this that engaging in sexual activity and thinking about it, and at least playing some of this stuff out in your mind, and maybe fantasizing about your wife can definitely help increase those levels. So maybe do that, and that might be a healthy outlet way to increase it, and in a way that you wouldn't really think, I guess.
All right, so you got to tell your wife, hey, look, I'm just trying to increase my testosterone.
That's right. Yeah. In a natural way. It's much cheaper than spending hundreds of dollars a month, babe. So this has been a great episode. We've shared some good stuff. Hopefully you guys can take some good takeaways from this and maybe apply some from your own. If you, and like Ethan said, if you've got anything that you want to try or that you have tried, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. And let's go ahead and build that creed together.